Meet the unspeakable Milo Binder. His new self-titled album, produced by the indefatigable Willie Aaron of The Balancing Act, The Holy Brothers, and The Third Mind, is available right now. If you like John Prine, Jonathan Richman, and Tom T. Hall more than Ed Sheeran, then this one's definitely for you. The unspeakable Milo Binder, available on Heyday Again Records at realgonemusic.com. The second single from Future Prophet Records is here. Birthday Girl presents Never the Sound, available right now on Future Prophet Records. That's Future, Prophet, records.com. Order now. The American Four would be among the first integrated rock and roll bands on the LA scene, and probably anywhere. Arthur immediately changed his singing style. Instead of trying to sing R&B, he began imitating white singers, especially Mick Jagger, and this is important. He started doing it as a joke, but he later said what started out as a put-on materialized as something real and positive. So it kind of became like, much later on, like Robert Pollard, like imitating the British singing style, and then that actually became his singing style.
Right, and he could still do the R&B thing too later in his career. Those are kind of two styles. He kind of incorporates them both, and then it's Mick is imitating R&B guys, Arthur's imitating Mick, and so it all kind of gets swirled up in there.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the deep dive podcast for music obsessives that gives maniacs like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and when I was a kid, I thought I loved music. But no, that was only the beginning. I almost lost my life, and in the process, it made music a top priority in a way I'd thought was completely unimaginable. I quit my job, went all in on Discograffiti, and never looked back. And so, with 3 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about, or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on love! Psst, along with our special guest, Joe Kennedy. This episode is part of a series called 7 and 7 and 7 is, the definitive 21-episode story of Arthur Lee and Love, which I've consciously crafted to act as the ultimate repository of fact and opinion on one of the greatest bands to ever walk the face of the earth, the almighty Love. It includes 13 episodes heralding the return of Discograffiti host OG Joe Kennedy, 6 episodes from a 4.5-hour interview with OG Love mainstay Johnny Echols, and 2 episodes from a 2.5-hour interview with the members of Baby Lemonade, who've served as Love now for coming up on 35 years. This is part 1, covering the early years, as best friends Arthur Lee and Johnny Echols spend copious amounts of time inspiring each other, all of it building toward the moment they record their very first album as Love. Here are just a few of the many things that Joe discusses with Discograffiti in this podcast. The miracle that brought Arthur Lee and Johnny Echols together as best friends, what Arthur was like as a kid, Arthur's inspiration to assemble his first band, how Arthur's style mutated until it reached a state of complete originality, the clubs on the Sunset Strip that were instrumental in allowing Love to grow, the reason Love had to thankfully change their name from the Grassroots, Manson acolyte Bobby Beausoleil's brief stint in the band, and how they arrived at the name Love. Coming up, we've got an incredible deep dive series on Jefferson Airplane and a hell of a lot more. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. For over 4 years now, Discograffiti's Friday episodes have been completely free, and it's been my pleasure. But for a variety of reasons, Discograffiti's now moved to the subscription-based Patreon as our primary platform. Moving forward, our public stream will feature a teaser of the Friday episode and a Tuesday teaser of the bonus episode, and that's all. But here's the good news. Only $5 a month will get you the weekly Friday podcast to which you become accustomed. That's it. It's a no-brainer at just $1 an episode. And just that little bit will be what's required to help the show survive. To sweeten the pot, you'll also get regular installments of the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's Rudy Fishman's podcast within a podcast featuring our Patreon members as guests. You'll also get access to over 100 back episodes of that show. The $10 Lieutenant tier gets you all that, plus access to half of the Patreon archive. That's hundreds of additional episodes, plus copies of my personal show notes, which include invaluable research, star ratings, and reviews. But the $20 major tier is the place to be, unless you can support the show on even higher tiers, which, if you can afford it, offers substantial perks, including advertising on the show and selecting the guests and artists I cover. With the major tier and above, you get it all. The Monday bonus episodes, aka the best stuff, the Friday show, the Soldiers of Sound podcast, plus access to the entire archive. That's many hundreds of Patreon episodes, an absolutely endless barrage of music entertainment, including 50 episodes of The Private Press with Paul Major, Rock Cousteau, Queasy Listening, and so much more. This tier will also be the only way to access the entire upcoming Spirit series, the entire Love series, the entire Lenny Waronker series, and the entire Jefferson Airplane series. Frankly, it'll keep you busy for the rest of your life. So support the podcast that's been supporting you for years. Discograffiti's calling, and it needs you. So don't risk feeling guilty by not giving. But enough of me yapping. Go on, subscribe now. Visit patreon.com/discograffiti and find the tier that's right for you. And away we go then. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Discograffiti's incredible, mind-blowing, expansively deep dive of Love and the Love series. I'm here today with one of the most important people on the planet, Joe Kennedy.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome back, Joe, to your show.
I'm very important, so let's get this crack-a-lackin'.
So we have two guests on this series, and that's going to be Joe Kennedy and Johnny Echols of Love fame. And, I'm very, very excited to have gotten Johnny to participate in this. Johnny's not going to be on board for the entirety because Joe and I are actually going to do the timeline part of the series. And then when we really hone in with the microscope and we want to explore certain areas, we'll kind of stop and take a breather and edit in some of the stuff that I've taped separately with Johnny.
This is like that Ken Burns Civil War thing.
No. This leaves that in the dust. There's no question. I have to say, I was going to say disproportionately excited for this, but it is not disproportionate. Love is one of the most major bands of my life. Plus, I feel like I've cracked a code in terms of figuring out how best to present this specific material. And the guy that I'm presenting it with, you, and of course, Johnny, life is sometimes just too good to be true. Very infrequently, but this is just one of those cases.
I haven't done a full proper episode of the show, I think, since episode 30, whatever. Marvin Gaye or something was the last one.
No, the last one is actually, you were on board for the first one and not the second one, kinda. Todd Rundgren. So you were on board for part one, and part two was mine to edit. It was my first time editing an entire episode, but you had left the show after part one of Rundgren.
No, I did part two of Rundgren. We finished taping it. You edited it.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
That's the last one I completed, I think.
Something like episode 36
right.
was the last one. That's unbelievable. Actually, you have done full artists, but just for the Off the Beaten Path series.
Right, not in the proper canonical show format.
Yeah. So this is exciting. And, for me, what Love means to me, I discovered them side by side right at the same time that I discovered Moby Grape, who I just finished another lengthy series about. This is in 1994 in San Francisco, when you and I, Joe, had reconnected after first meeting at Boston University. And, I believe I got Da Capo and Forever Changes right around the same time at Revolution Records on Haight Street. And interestingly, I had previously purchased Forever Changes and immediately had written it off and thought it was overrated. I didn't get it. I didn't get the message. This is early on. I was a kid and I just wasn't ready. But in 94, I was ready and they really blew me away. And I actually always, in my mind, commingle Moby Grape and Love because I had discovered them at the same time, but also because their stories have enough similarities that they'll always be commingled for me.
Yeah, they are two artists that have a lot of similarities in their how they came up through the clubs and went through the hype machine. And when their records came out, they kind of didn't blow up as they were hyped. And of course, the quality and their relevance to the music scene where they came from.
And the mystery.
Right. My first time I was aware of Love, when I was a kid, we had Da Capo. Is it Da Capo? Da Capo?
I always thought Da Capo, but I'll be following.
I don't know. I'm flipping the coin on it. Anyway, we had it in my house when I was little. It was one of my dad's records. And I don't think I ever really played it very much. We had that, and it was like kind of in the record shelf next to my dad's Peanut Butter Conspiracy record. I don't think I ever really fired either of those up. And I just kind of always assumed Love was a minor band that nobody really knew. I feel like in the 90s, there was kind of a renaissance of interest in them. And I'm sure it was through you, like you're saying, that in those San Francisco days where I first really kind of tried to appreciate the records and got into Forever Changes and then the rest of their catalog. Probably around that same time, 94, 95 in there.
So just in case you are not familiar with Love and you're coming to this as a neophyte looking to get introduced to a great new band, in terms of their musical style, it really is an amalgam of so many different things, a cauldron of different genres. Their music has been described as a mixture of folk rock, psychedelic rock, baroque pop, Spanish-tinged pop, R&B, garage rock, and even some proto-punk. Arthur Lee, the main songwriter and the head of the band, has even been graced with the tag of being the first punk rocker, but he did not take the phrase as a compliment because he considered the term punk, as a lot of people in prison do, as meaning being somebody's bitch, quote unquote.
Yeah, he's got that prison background.
Yeah. So although Arthur Lee's vocals have earned some comparisons to Johnny Mathis, his lyrics often center on dark and troubling topics, which is not Mathis-like in the least. But yet the true stamp of an Arthur Lee lyric is that the darkness is typically delivered with a wry, clever twist, and nothing is ever quite as it seems in his world. It is, I can say with total certainty, as unique and original a worldview as any in musical history.
The timing, especially when this first record we're talking about today, when that was made, it was the first month of 1966. The whole world of music is still so open. There's so many areas to plant your flag where it has not been planted yet. There's so many fusions that had not been tried. And they really got there ahead of a lot of people, I feel like.
Yeah, and his worldview, even though there were a lot of bands that were climbing onto a bandwagon, that was never his thing. At least initially, you could not say that his worldview and his perspective was ever bandwagon-esque. At his best, Arthur's psychedelic riddles would pose questions that, although completely unanswerable, especially the record Forever Changes, they hung like black storm clouds over the late 60s, and they seemed to both reveal his future self with a clarity and a certainty that was prescient, and also concurrently guide his own hand to fly the plane of his own life right into the side of a mountain, which is of endless interest to me. And with regard to solving those psychedelic riddles, it certainly doesn't help that the myth of Arthur Lee is like a particularly crazy game of telephone, with fans preferring the philosophy of the wilder the tale, the better. One last thing before we begin. This is a deep, deep, deep dive. This band deserves it. And what likely will be the thing here is Joe and I tracking the entire history of the band, not some abridged Johnny-come-lately version of the tale that ends the minute they hand in Forever Changes to Elektra, but the full story. And my interview with Johnny Echols will be weaving its way in and out of the Dave and Joe timeline chunks.
And we'll do the thing where we talk about the record in depth.
All right, that about does it. To hear the full episode, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either subscribe as a private or higher, or just purchase it as a one-off. If you are a fan of the show, please do one of those two to help ensure Discograffiti's continued existence. Stay tuned, because next week brings upon us episode 3 of 7 and 7 and 7 is the definitive 21-episode story of Arthur Lee and Love. It's our episode about their one and only self-titled Elektra debut. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then, come Tuesday, the major tier gets a very special treat. Tuesday's bonus episode is part 4 of our 7 and 7 and 7 is Love series. It's the Johnny Echols interview about Love's self-titled debut. There will be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Tuesday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful son Mason, Joe Kennedy, Willie Aaron, Johnny Echols, Mike Randall, Rusty Squeezebox, David Green, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, and access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the amniotically dark and cozy psychedelic underworld of the 60s and 70s is to leap headfirst into our Spirit series. That's episodes 241 to 249, the Lenny Waronker interview, that's 244 and 245, our ongoing Graham Nash interview in which he talks about everything he's ever done, our 13-episode Moby Grape series featuring interviews with Peter Lewis, Don Stevenson, and Bob Mosley, that's episodes 208 to 214, The Beatles' Pete Best, that's episode 188, our free design interview with all the Dedrick siblings, that's 160 to 162, our Mamas and Papas series featuring my 16-hour Michelle Phillips interview, which she says is the best interview she's ever done. That's episodes 141 to 159. My 13-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander about everything the association ever did. That's 109 to 113. My interview with Vashti Bunyan about her life and everything she's ever recorded, that's 103 to 104. My interview with Os Mutants Sergio Diaz, that's 86 and 87. Lou Barlow on the Zombies, that's 59 and 60. Foxygen's Jonathan Rado on Todd Rundgren, that's 37 and 40. Anthony Fantano on the Velvet Underground, that's 32 and 33. Bob Forrest on the band, that's 25 and 27. Andrew Sandoval on the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy on David Axelrod, that's episode 17. And Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, March 20th, we're coming at you with a sweet, sweet deep dive on one of the greatest debuts of all time, Love's self-titled 1966 platter on Elektra Records. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!